One.
Welcome to the City Council meeting of February 2nd, 2023. City Clerk, preamble, please.
This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16th, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and council members while allowing for public participation. Accordingly, the public may observe city council meetings and or address the council using remote public comment options or have the option to attend city council meetings in person. Please be advised that city council members may continue to participate in the meeting remotely. The council may take action on any item listed in the agenda. To address the council in person. Location, 50 Park Place, Brisbane, Community Meeting Room. Masks are no longer required, but are highly recommended in accordance with the California Department of Health guidelines. To maintain public health and safety, please do not attend in person if you're experiencing symptoms associated with COVID-19 or respiratory illness. To address the City Council on any item on or not on the agenda, fill out a request to speak form located in the Community Meeting Room lobby and submit it to the City Clerk. Remote participation. Members of the public may observe, participate in the City Council meeting by logging into the Zoom webinar listed below. City Council meetings can also be viewed live and or on demand via the city's YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrisbaneCA, or on Comcast Channel 27. Archive videos can be replayed on the city's website, brisbaneca.org/meetings. Please be advised that if there are technological difficulties, the meetings will nevertheless continue. The agenda materials may be viewed online at brisbaneca.org at least 24 hours prior to a special meeting and at least 72 hours prior to a regular meeting. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comments in writing in advance of the meeting. Aside from commenting while in the Zoom webinar, the following email and text line will be also monitored during the meeting, and public comments received will be noted for the record during oral communications 1 and 2 or during an item. Email ipadilla@brisbaneca.org, text 628-219-2922, join the Zoom webinar with the ID 991-9362-8666 and the call-in number 1-669-900-9128. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the City Clerk at 415-508-2113. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. Thank you.
I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:34 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Here.
Councilmember Lenz?
Here.
Councilmember Mackin?
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. City Attorney, do we have a report out from closed session?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The City Council met in closed session and addressed the BRE Brisbane litigation, as well as the California high-speed rail sequel litigation that Brisbane is engaged in. On both matters, the council gave legal counsel direction. Thank you, Madam.
Great. Now we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. I would like to move up new business item G before the public hearing. Is everyone amenable to that? That would be age-friendly cities discussion.
Yes, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda with that amendment?
So moved.
Colleen, can we take yours as a second?
Sure.
Okay. Motion made by Cliff, second by Colleen. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. We'll now move on to awards and presentation.
Madam Mayor, we need to report out of closed session.
Oh, we did.
Oh, we did? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Item A, proclamation recognizing Black History Month. Proclamation, the City of Brisbane City Council proclamation designating February 2023 Black History Month. Whereas National African American History Month first originated as Negro History Week in 1926 as part of an initiative by writer and educator Dr. Carter G. Woodson to recognize the heritage and achievements of African Americans and to enhance knowledge about African American history. Whereas the national theme for 2023 is Black resistance, acknowledging Black people have sought ways to nurture and protect Black lives and for autonomy of their physical and intellectual bodies through armed resistance, voluntary immigration, nonviolence, education, literature, sports, media, legislation/politics. Black-led institutions and affiliations have lobbied, litigated, legislated, protested, and achieved success. And whereas by resisting, Black people have achieved triumphs as seen in the end of chattel slavery, the dismantling of Jim and Jane Crow segregation in the South, increased political representation at all levels of government, desegregation of educational institutions, and the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the opening of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C., and increased representation of Black experiences in media. And whereas Black resistance acknowledges Black people have had to consistently push the United States to live up to its ideals of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. And whereas Black resistance strategies have served as a model for every other social movement in this country and around the globe. Thus, the legacy and importance of these actions cannot be understated. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Brisbane City Council calls on the larger community to study Black life, history, and culture, which can be easily accessed at asalh.org, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and to acknowledge the value African American residents add to the strength, fortitude, and resilience of our city. Okay. There's no one here to receive this proclamation, correct? Okay. So now we will move on to oral communications number 1. I have a number of slips this evening. We will be using the 2-minute time limit. If you feel like that's not enough time for you, after your 2 minutes is up, please return to your seat and then you can come up and continue your comments for another 2 minutes after everyone else has had a turn. So my first speaker here is Jesse Karekis. Please approach the podium. And if you could state your name correctly, just in case I got it wrong, that would be great.
Stephen Jesse Karekis. Hi.
Hi.
What Brisbane could use, in my opinion, help from the city council is the distribution of Narcan, which is an opiate reversal drug. I was just doing some rough math from the coroner's department, and over 100 people died in 2020 from fentanyl in San Mateo County alone. So that's what affects 100 families. The county will provide free Narcan kits, and that's a nasal spray that you just spray it into somebody's nose, and if it works, that's wonderful. And if it doesn't work, if they're having some other trouble besides overdosing, it won't make the heart attack worse or anything like that. My neighbor, who's a policeman in the mission, said he's used it over 40 times and only once it didn't work. He said that people are a little cranky when they come out of their stupor, but what are you going to do? I lost my 18-year-old son to taking one pill that had fentanyl in it. He had anxiety. He thought he was taking a Xanax and it killed him. Neighbor down the street, her daughter, young woman, 20 something, did a line of cocaine, had fentanyl in it. She dropped dead. It's not only the fentanyl problem, but years ago, my mother got her medicines mixed up and she took too many of an opiate drug like that. We got her to the hospital, so that's good. People get mixed up when they're taking drugs or something like that. And I know the police carry it, and the fire department carry it, but I think people should have it in their medicine kit, in their car. The problem I'm having with San Mateo is that I can't buy 100 units from them or get 100 units for free from them and distribute them because I'm not a 5013C or a city council. 4 years ago, I watched them take my son out of the house in a body bag. He was fine when he went downstairs. He was fine. So anyway, I just hope that other families don't have to go through that. And it's been 4 years now, and I was thinking two things I feel blessed about is that Gabriel went very peacefully. It wasn't a violent death. And maybe together we can do something and save one family from that pain. That doesn't ever seem to go away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Our
Patrick.
next speaker is Nancy Loxamana.
Nancy Loxamana, resident Brisbane. I've known Jesse and his two boys since the oldest son was in kindergarten with my son. And before Gabe passed away, I did go to the funeral in, I believe, March of 2020 of the young lady that is a neighbor of theirs. And I was just in tears and shock as a lot of residents were there. This is Narcan. That's all it is. And I have this from a nonprofit and I keep it in my car. I've never used it. I've never had to use it, but I intend to use it if I have to save somebody for a family that has gone through this. In today's paper, or excuse me, on the internet, 3 articles popped up right away. LA students will be able to carry Narcan in schools under updated policy. Experts urge better opioid rescue drug access to save lives. And a police officer in Phoenix 20 hours ago was given Narcan after ingesting white substance during a traffic stop. This is an epidemic of extreme proportions, and we need to do everything we can in our community to make sure that our children and our families never have to go through what their family and the other family did. So this is a sobering. I did do a little cheat sheet from the internet, what Narcan is. So please, it'll be distributed to you. On a different note, totally different note, I've been helping some seniors in town try to find housing. There are so many seniors in this town that are in a larger home that would like to go to a smaller home. They need affordable housing for seniors. I really, really hope that you will start to consider more housing for seniors. Our senior housing is over 6-year waiting list. So I really hope that you can dig deep into that, figure out what is the standards and what is happening in that senior housing, which I understand is happening, but we need so many more senior housing units. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And we're going to pause for a second because I believe we're having some technical difficulties. And I want to make sure that all the public comment is being retained. So,
So the report right now, Madam Mayor, is that the broadcast is working, but the current Zoom and YouTube feed is having technical difficulties. Would you like to, can we take a 5-minute?
I think this is going to be hard for our council members that are joining us via Zoom to be engaging.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Looks good.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this is Colleen. We're getting the audio clear. It's just the video. So if you want to go ahead with the audio, I don't have a problem with that. You could ask Councilmember O'Connell, and then they could be working on the video.
If the video is showing, then it is a migraine trigger for me
Yeah.
That's right.
with the way
Oh.
what it's doing. And I think if we can take a couple-minute break and try to get that straightened up, it would be better for all of us.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break, but while we do that, if there's any other members of the public who are here in person who are wishing to speak, or if you are joining us via Zoom, if you could let our city clerk know and submit a speaker card, then we can get you in line to speak when we come back. If not, we'll move on past oral communications. Thank you. With oral communications, I believe Councilmember Lentz would like to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. So, I just want to thank Jesse for coming up here tonight. I mean, that showed a lot of courage, right? He's dealing with a lot of pain and suffering, and so I've been talking with Jesse about his situation, and his goal is to communicate and to provide awareness about.
He's been speaking to me too.
Yeah.
He's in a lot of pain.
He is, right? And so I reached out to the county and talking with some folks at the county health department and trying to educate our community a little bit better on what's going on with this epidemic. And so they recommended a nonprofit to perhaps come before us on the council and give a presentation. And so perhaps if we could put that on our next agenda, if the timing works, I think that would be great.
Sounds good.
Sure. I mean, let's coordinate with staff and see how lengthy that agenda is, and if it won't work on that one, then certainly the one after. But I think that's a good idea. Is staff aware of this already? Okay. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Lentz. City Clerk, is there anyone else wishing to speak under oral communications number 1? Okay, so we will move on to the consent calendar.
Madam
do
Mayor,
I-
we do have one.
Okay,
This is Michelle Salmon.
okay, Michelle Salmon, go ahead.
I would just like to remind everyone, I took CPR and first aid several times from Joe Rydell. And the number one thing he said, I mean, getting Narcan is a good idea. And I'm so very sorry for the tragic loss of your children. And fentanyl is a horrible drug. But I just want to say this to everybody for everything. If you even think you have any kind of emergency, the first thing you dial is 911. They will come. You can always cancel if it turns out not to be an emergency. But as many times as I've learned how many breaths and how many pumps and all this other stuff, the number one thing that Joe Rydell always taught us was call 911 first, immediately. You can always cancel, but those are precious seconds. So please remember that. Don't hesitate to call 911 if you think you have an emergency of any kind, especially a fentanyl overdose, because our police and our fire do carry Narcan. And doing what Joe Rydell said saved my husband's life. So please call 911 if you have an emergency. I just can't stress that enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, now we will move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion and a second to approve consent calendar items B through E?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. City Clerk, roll call, please. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. So now we will move on to new business item G. Consider approval moving forward with the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence's assistance to apply for the Age-Friendly Community Certification under the AARP/WHO Network of Age-Friendly Communities. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I'm here this evening to introduce the concept of age-friendly cities and to ask for the City Council's support in moving this initiative forward for the Brisbane community. The global network of age-friendly cities offers opportunities to address the aging population in a positive and inclusive way. The program provides resources to help communities support individuals to live comfortably in their homes and communities, and also encourages older residents to take an active role in having their voices heard. To be designated as an age-friendly city through the World Health Organization, Brisbane must demonstrate that it is committed to providing places for older adults to be engaged, as well as social opportunities and services that ensure older adults can thrive and be active in part of the community. At this time, I would like to introduce Ann O'Brien from the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, who is joining us virtually this evening. She will be sharing her screen to provide some additional information regarding the program and would be happy to answer any questions you may have following her presentation.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to go next?
Yes, I am trying to share my screen. Do you see it?
We see it.
Okay, perfect. And you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Davis, Vice Mayor, council members, and City Manager Clay Holstein. My name is Anne O'Brien Keegren, and I work for the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence. Tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of a background about age-friendly cities and communities. Our goal is to advance your understanding of age-friendly cities. Our organization actually has worked with San Mateo County for the past 4 years, and we have fortunately received a grant from San Mateo County to work with 8 cities over the next 18 months. This is under the leadership of Supervisor David Canepa. And we have actually working right now with East Palo Alto, and we're hoping to add San Bruno and Brisbane. The goal of the World Health Organization is to advance vibrant, healthy, and inclusive communities for all, and to tap into the potential that older people represent for humanity. The goal for cities is a communication to listen to the needs of their aging population and to assess and monitor their age friendliness and work collaboratively with older people across all sectors and ultimately create an age-friendly physical and social environment for them to thrive. The Age-Friendly Network was founded in 2005, and we now have over 1,400 cities worldwide that are certified in actually 51 different countries. In the last couple of months, we have certified Belmont and Millbrae, and South San Francisco should be next on the list. We're hoping to get them certified probably in March. About 10,000 adults turn 65 daily, and this will continue until about 2030. When I was looking at the census for Brisbane, about 21% of your population is over the age of 60. So there's 8 domains of livability that really basically is the framework that is used by cities, counties, and states and countries in order to organize and prioritize our work and create an environment that is more livable for both older residents and people of all ages. These are all evidence-based, and while some communities tackle all 8 domains at once, other cities sometimes just combine a few of those domains or just pick a few domains to focus on. So let me start on the first domain, and that's outdoor spaces and buildings. Basically, people need public places to gather, whether it's indoors or outdoors. For example, we need to look at sidewalks, safe streets, and accessible buildings. We also want to make sure there is adequate lighting and signage that is large enough for older adults to be able to read. Transportation being another domain is as we know, driving shouldn't be the only way to get around. Public transit options need to be expansive, and private transportation options really need to be affordable. We want walkable cities, safe sidewalks for walking and biking, and then have curb cuts for wheelchairs and adequate lighting at night. As mentioned actually from one of your public speakers, housing is very important. Older adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible, and they want to stay in their community. So it's really important to look at how can we provide affordable housing and available housing for all income levels. Social participation is the next domain. Regardless of a person's age, loneliness is often as debilitating a health condition as a physical one. And as I think we all learned during the COVID pandemic, we really saw how loneliness affected our older adults since they were in their homes for long periods of time. It's very important to have social activities and recreational resources available, and also to provide cultural and intergenerational opportunities. Respect and social inclusion. We want everyone to feel valued. Intergenerational activities are a way for the young and the old to learn from one another. For example, teaching older adults how to use tech devices, and then having older adults help younger kids read. It's quite interesting that the World Health Organization conducted an analysis which showed that there are negative attitudes or ageist attitudes toward older people, and it's quite widespread. About 60% of the respondents to the World Value Survey analyzed by the World Health Organization reports that older people are not respected. And this, of course, is not acceptable. San Mateo County talks about inclusivity, equity, and diversity, and age does represent diversity. Everyone goes through that cycle of life, and this lifelong process should unite us all. We are definitely not immune from the aging process, so rather than skirting it, we should actually be embracing it. Civic participation and employment is the next domain. This basically provides the opportunities for older people to volunteer, work, and expand their knowledge skills. This helps people become more involved with their community. Communication and information. This seems to be one of the most important domains that cities are finding when we give them back their information from their focus groups. Age-friendly communities recognize that not everyone has the most modern technology, whether it's a smartphone or internet access, and that information really needs to be disseminated through a variety of means. Some examples of this is to provide free Wi-Fi to older adults or subsidized Wi-Fi, and programs that teach them technology, providing emergency preparedness training. We have communication, support, and health services as our last domain here, and basically is having affordable medical care and convenience. Also health promotion and disease prevention, and enhancing awareness of available support services that we have throughout San Mateo County that many people aren't aware of. Before going into the city of Brisbane, you know, the cities that have been certified have done some really good work, and I'm going to touch upon that a little bit later. But, you know, City of Brisbane's already on their way. You have your housing element. You've had a few senior housing developments. You've conducted the 2022 community-wide needs assessment. You have a phenomenal organization, the Brisbane Village Helping Hands, that really does a lot of work in your community already. You have your monthly newsletter, senior lunches, and then plenty of programs that are held at the senior sunrise room. So let me touch a little bit about the process of Age Friendly. We have already developed a countywide core team. We meet actually on a monthly basis. So we have a couple staff people from Aging and Adult Services from the county. We have someone from the Peninsula Family Services, Senior Villages, and then my colleagues that are on the cafe team. So in conjunction, when we work with the city, we work with council, we work with some city staff to organize a task force. And then in that task force, we also want to try to include community leaders that have been involved in the community. From there, what we do is the task force helps to develop focus groups. And we like to do about, depending on the size of your city, between maybe 2 and 4 focus groups. And we like the focus groups maybe up to 10 people. We are willing to do focus groups by Zoom, in person, and then maybe for the people that may not have technology and can't get physically to a place to have a focus group, we're more than willing to do a phone call. So like I said, we do about 2 to 4 focus groups, and we will provide qualitative data from all those focus groups to the task force. Also, San Mateo County, they do a quantitative analysis, and that is also sent to the task force. And once the projects are identified from the task force, then we'll pick maybe 3 to 4 inaugural projects. And then I will help staff and the task force fill out the application to send to the AARP to get certified. And just to give you a few examples of projects that have been done with cities that we've worked with, Daly City, under the communications information domain, they actually focused on the digital divide and created a laptop lending program with training. And then they were also able to get some grant money to offer free Wi-Fi for an entire neighborhood of low income. They also addressed the isolation issues. They developed a resource line, a telehealth checks, and also partnerships with nursing students. They developed a pen pal program and a grab and go lunch meals with delivery for homebound seniors. Burlingame actually utilizes the Simplicity app. And what they do is it provides one-way communication to inform older adults about crime and safety, library and rec events, and any other workshops or community events that are going on. So they get to pick, what categories they want to receive information. Pacifica now provides workshops on a quarterly basis to assist older adults in applying for subsidized housing, in addition to providing education about ADUs and how they can support aging in place and multi-generational housing. They've also created a Connect-a-Ride program, which is kind of similar to the Got Wheels program in Daly City. They actually were able to get an anonymous donor gave $3 million to Pacifica to create this transportation system. San Carlos has developed a medical equipment loan program through their Rotary by making available recycled medical equipment that is safe and available at no cost for local residents. They've also started a public access show, and that was started by the villages of San Mateo County, and it's called Age Friendly Bay Area. And then Redwood City developed an Appy Hour and a pop-up nightclub and game nights for older adults. So we've actually certified 11 cities at this time, with the 12th on its way. So basically, this is a 5-year commitment, which includes certification, an action plan, and continual evaluation. So CAFE basically helps you in the initial phase in getting the application into the AARP and getting yourself certified. Then what you do within a 2-year period of certification, you come up with an action plan, and that can be done internally, or you can have, let's say, maybe a senior advisory group or CAFE or anyone else that does action plans to kind of help you through that. And basically what it is, it's a living document that the council can look at in future years, and staff to look at short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals that you will continually evaluate over the years. If for some reason, let's say you get certified and you're not able to get the action plan done within 2 years, you can ask for an extension to the AARP, and many of the cities have already done that, and they're more than happy to give you that. And then on a yearly basis, you fill out one form for your evaluation, so they know that you're continually working on that action plan, and that you're really looking at policy through an older adult lens. This is the action plan of what is included in an action plan, which you won't have to deal with for quite some time, but I just wanted it up here so you can kind of see what's included in that. But like I said, basically the plan is put together really from results of any surveys that have been done, the qualitative data that we have supplied to you, and how you've worked on those 8 domains. There, of course, are many benefits of having an age-friendly city. They contribute to the economic, social, and cultural life in a community. Analysis actually shows that older adults as a group contribute significantly to the regional GDP. Their personal income and discretionary spending actually far exceeds the personal income and spending of any other cohort, which I actually found quite interesting. So CAFE would really just like the support from the City Council to be able to work with you and support you through this process. The staff time is quite minimal. We just need staff for the task force groups that we have each month, and just to get their feedback on what you are actually currently working on. And when we do the focus groups, you really ask 3 questions. And the 3 questions are, what are the strengths in Brisbane already in place that address older adult issues? What are areas of improvement in the domains? And then what type of solutions would you like to see implemented futuristically? But basically, all we want to do is increase the awareness of the needs of older adults. And really, when making policy, it's important to look at things through an older adult lens. And it also really follows Governor Newsom's master plan for aging that was developed in 2020. And in that master plan, it really encourages all people or all cities actually to be age-friendly certified. And so, like I said, we'd like to have Brisbane next on our list to be able to work with, especially when there's grant money there for you. And like I said, we basically probably do 90% of the work. And then the rest is just basically feedback from the focus group and task force group, and then prioritizing projects that could potentially be implemented in Brisbane. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Anne. Are there council questions?
I don't have any questions for Ann, but I just wanted to say, thank you, Ann, for your passion to promote age-friendly communities throughout the county. And, I didn't know anything about it until you called me and just shared that information with me. And I'm glad that you're here tonight, giving this presentation. And I hope that we're all in line with going for it. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Councilmember Blins.
Can we minimize the screen so that I can see?
We have a raised hand from Councilmember Mackin.
Okay.
Anne, would you mind stop sharing? So
Sure, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Just lost it here. Let's see.
Councilmember Mackin,
I
go
took
ahead.
care of it for you.
Oh, great, thanks. Perfect, thank you.
Anne,
Yes.
the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, I see when I've looked up the organization, it's tied to Los Altos, I believe. Community
Foundation.
Could you just, I was very curious, and I think maybe some other people might be as well, how long the organization has been in existence. You've partnered on this with AARP, but is this the first initiative that you've dealt with, or was the organization created just to do this? Just a little bit of background. I would love to hear about it.
Right, the organization's been around quite a few years. I'm actually the newbie on the team. I just joined them in March of last year. But they were actually instrumental in working with Santa Clara County. And Santa Clara County actually became the first age-friendly certified county in the state of California. And that was CAFE actually was the one that initiated all that. They've also been working with Hawaii and the state of Oregon.
So if in fact Brisbane, for instance, or any other peninsula city just came up with their own potential initiatives, do you work then individually? Are you available to work with cities?
So the way this has been set up, as I mentioned, CAFE started with San Mateo County 4 years ago. And Supervisor Canepa and Annabelle Pelham, who's the head of the organization, met. And he took an interest to older adult issues. And so I was fortunate to have the opportunity actually to work with CAFE through Supervisor Canepa's office, because that's where I was at that time working as a legislative aide. And so we had decided that the board of supervisors decided this was something very important, and that they were willing to give some Measure K money for this. So we've done this kind of in sections with the hope that we can get all 20 cities in the peninsula certified. So at this time, as I mentioned, we have 11 cities certified, and then South San Francisco hopefully will be certified either by the end of February or mid-March. And we've been just kind of going down the line with cities. And so we felt that it would not be nice. Our next three would be Brisbane, East Palo Alto, and San Bruno.
And perhaps I should clarify, I wasn't intending to say that we would come up with a different initiative, more that I think this is such a great idea, and you have a good role here serving as a facilitator for all these cities. So I was just thinking if there were additional things that cities might say, this is a great idea, and we have other ideas, would you, as an organization, be available maybe to coordinate that as well with Peninsula cities?
True.
I would say we would be open if there was additional, if like Brisbane wanted us to do additional things and develop a contract to do that. Absolutely. For example, the action plans. Some cities are doing it on their own. And then we have other cities that want CAFE to help them put it together. And so we will do additional contracts with cities if they wish to work with us on other issues. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think what you're doing is great. Thank you much.
You're quite welcome.
Any other council questions? Councilmember O'Connell?
Thank you. So is CAFE looking to get a contract with Brisbane, a fee to initiate this process?
No. So this process, and to get you certified, is already covered through the Measure K grant money. So that is available now. And so we have a contract to work with 8 cities during an 18-month period. And so you are one of the cities that we have selected.
Okay, thank you. I think my other questions would be for staff and council.
Do you want to ask questions for staff now?
I'd rather get the opportunity for the rest of the council to ask questions of Ms. Keegan.
Okay. Council Member Cunningham?
I don't have any questions for Anne. Anne and I have been speaking on a daily basis for the last few weeks. We are ready to hit the road if the council so approves this project.
Thank you. I don't have any questions either, so I'll turn it back to Councilmember O'Connell if she wishes to ask questions of staff at this time.
Sure. Looking at what we've done and where we're at in, some of our projects that we've been doing and the needs of the community and what we know of the needs of the community, is this something that really is in the Park and Rec venue, or would this be better served in the idea or committee? And does staff have any comments on that?
My erstwhile staff is all looking at me, so I'll take that on. I think at the moment, this is probably best with the Parks and Rec. Nicole Houghton is going to be the lead staff person. There is probably some interface with the Public Works Department, depending on what sorts of things come up. I've also, I think when Ann and I talked, I indicated that I do have a person in our communications manager who might be able to help out on some of the communications to the Chinese community. So that is also a resource. So Nicole will be the lead, but we'll use other resources in the city where needed.
I mean, the only reason I'm saying is I think that, you know, personally, what I've heard, you know, from the community, and I certainly haven't done any focus groups or that kind of outreach, but it seems to me communications is one of the biggest issues and items that are out there. And frankly, our Park and Rec department is pretty robust and a fairly large chunk of our budget right at the moment, our discretionary budget. And so that gives me cause for concern that we're looking at this as a Park and Rec program more than a long-term program to help with possible, you know, they talked about ADUs and transportation and a lot of other things that I think we certainly could probably do better for our aging communities than just in the Park and Rec department. And so that concerns me to have it through the Park and Rec.
Councilmember Mackin. Oh, wait. Anne, were you wanting to respond to?
If you don't mind,
Yeah,
I'd like to
okay.
respond. So when we've worked with other cities, Councilmember O'Connell, they've had a representative from Park and Rec and might have a representative from the library. But remember, when we do our focus groups, I will go through every single domain and get feedback from the community. And so when the task force looks at that, the projects, and I don't just pick, you know, the 3 or 4, that's not for me to do. It's for your task force to do. But what I will do when we do the focus groups, I've had as many as 70 projects that have been mentioned. I will put a spreadsheet together with all those projects. And then your task force will pick, you know, 3 or 4 inaugural projects just to get certified. But from there, futuristically, if there are things that are related to transportation, are related to social isolation, you know, public works, etc., you can put that all in your action plan document. And that's when you would probably integrate all your department heads on their expertise on how to move forward, you know, on those tasks whenever they feel the timing is best. They don't all have to be involved in the certification process, but they definitely would need to be involved in the action plan process. I don't know if that helps you clarify
Thank
things a
you.
little bit.
It does explain things, but I will say again to staff and to my fellow council members and the public that, you know, if we are leading this with the Park and Rec department, that will tend to be where the focus gets shown. And I'm not asking for your response on this, Ms. Keegan. I'm talking to my council members. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Mackin.
Thank you. I would echo what Councilmember O'Connell said in that all the things that we've heard about this program and that need to be dealt with, which Councilmember O'Connell brought up. We're talking about public works, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about planning. And in terms of inclusion, we're talking about our IDEA committee. And more importantly, within an aging population, that includes many segments, which is exactly what our IDEA committee is convened for. So I would like to see the IDEA committee on the front end of this. I think that they're a great starting point. And my same concern I would echo is that this is not geared towards parks and recreation by any means. So I don't quite understand why we're doing that. So I would have the same question for staff.
Oh, if I could, just a couple of points. One is that, I think our normal way of operating is that we're pretty small in all our functions in terms of staff depth. And so but there are a lot of committees that may have a lead staff person from a particular department and then have different staff that will come in from other departments. OSEC would be an example, led by in the Public Works Department, but there are times when the Planning Department comes in and supplements that. The Assistant City Manager, I think, had a meeting with them last year on some finance issues. So we plug in the people where we need to have them. I think the Idea Committee would be maybe one of the focus groups. I think that could work out very well. Keep in mind, the Idea Committee does not have dedicated staff. I mean, it's the city clerk, it's the human resources manager, and it's the communications manager. It's assignments that they take on. So there's really there's no staff there to actually lead that. So that's I think because this has been kind of a Parks and Rec focus throughout the county, that was one of the reasons. The second, again, is, we'll bring in the resources where we need them as we move along in this process.
Madam Mayor.
Karen.
Okay, Councilmember Cunningham.
Just so everybody knows, if we move forward with this, we have 8 very solid leaders in the community who have already volunteered to be on a task force with Anne, that are, leaders from the Lions Club, etc. So we already have a pretty good group of people who are willing to do the work, who are not staff.
And how were they chosen?
I just made phone calls to the Lions Club asking for volunteers. Actually, the president of the Lions Club, she worked on this program and would be here tonight talking about it, except that she is just took on a new job and is up to her eyeballs in alligators, so to speak. And then I just made phone calls, based on the criteria that Anne had suggested for people who would like to be on a task force and be leaders, to gauge the interest. It doesn't mean these people are going to be those people, but just to gauge the interest. And there was a lot of interest in the community.
Okay, Councilmember Lentz.
Yeah, thank you. So Clay, we provide services for our seniors at the Sunrise Room, like activities and luncheons and things like that. And which department, kind of oversees that engagement with the seniors?
That's the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, so I guess it sounds like we already have a connection with the Park and Rec Department and our seniors.
Yeah,
in the community.
They oversee the senior program.
All right, and so then having the Park and Rec Department kind of continue to be a part of that outreach with the seniors, bringing in folks like from the Idea Committee, or I know it's asked for a couple of council members. There could be other folks like you talked about, Karen. So I don't know, does that sound like something that makes sense? I mean, it kind of
Yeah,
does to me.
I think the initial conversation I had with Anne was, of course, each city is spread thin. Everybody's already working really hard. And, then we have a crisis on New Year's Eve, which spreads our staff even thinner. Park and Rec with shovels in their hand for days, I saw. So that was one of the reasons I reached out to a bunch of people to say, would you be interested in helping out here? And it was an overwhelmingly positive response.
That's great.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that the people I spoke to are going to be the people. I just spoke to people that we all know and said, hey, are you interested if this goes through council and is approved? Would you be interested in being a volunteer? And it was yes. And one lady from the senior center, she said, oh my gosh, I finally get to use my Chinese speaking skills. So, I mean, it was all very positive.
So before we really start getting into discussion, I want to make sure that we leave room for public comment. Does anyone else have specifically questions at this time for staff? If not, I'm going to go to public comment because we do have some slips here. Okay, so I have a slip here. Oh, wait, I have Sophia Brink, I believe, from Supervisor Canepa's office is wanting to make a comment. Okay, go ahead, Sophia.
Hello, thank you. My name is Sophia Brink. I am Supervisor Canepa's legislative aide. I'm here on behalf of him. We would just like to express our office and Supervisor Canepa would like to commend Councilmember Cunningham on her great advocacy to implement the age-friendly initiative in Brisbane. Our office and Supervisor Canepa is a tireless supporter of the age-friendly cities, as we believe the approach is more equitable and offers a safe approach to uplifting our aging communities and bettering the community for our aging folks. So thank you again for considering this, and we hope you move forward with it.
Thank you, Sophia. Okay, I have a slip here from Paul Buscal.
Thanks. Hi, Ann. Thank you. Paul Buscal, Brisbane resident. So I have a couple things. One, I deliver food to the seniors as a volunteer 1 day a week here in Brisbane. They are very grateful for that 1 day a week meal. And they're very lonely people. And sometimes that once a week visit was all they had. So we've had some outings that were, not sanctioned by the city, but that they wanted to go on. And I've worked with members on the council as well as staff here in Brisbane to come up with a shuttle that could take people up to San Bruno Mountain, which is one of our most accessible for all different abilities parks in the county. So for our seniors in particular, we're working on a shuttle because, to your point about transportation, we've never had a bus that goes from Brisbane over to Daly City over Guadalupe. And at the top of Guadalupe is our park, San Bruno Mountain, which is a state and county park. So we are working on something for transportation, but more transportation would be better, more often. One of the other things I'm really concerned about is food insecurities. A lot of these people aren't eating well. I know that there's a neighborhood in Westlake that feeds their seniors daily. So maybe we can get some sponsorship from companies and whoever wants to put into an endowment to be able to have funds to have some type of daily meal program and set money aside for staff as well that would have to fulfill that role of not only picking up the food, but delivering it. Right now it's a combination of staff and volunteers. So I would like to see that worked on. And the last thing that I would like to share with you is that a lot of these seniors are not only lonely, but they're in these homes that aren't safe. And whether they're not safe for health, for not being clean, or not safe for too many stairs, or dangerous bathrooms, or all the things that they have to live with. And unlike affordable housing that we work towards for our seniors, I would like to see us work on something that was a transfer of properties or some type of thing where they could buy a one-bedroom apartment, like at the 23 Club parking lot. That lot is $2 million. I mean, it would be a perfect centrally located place for our seniors, because if you ask most seniors where would they like to be, they want to stay in their community first and foremost. I mean, they would like to stay in their homes, but a lot of the homes are just too big. So if we could work on something where we aid our seniors in transferring properties to a safer, more senior-friendly property. So thank you for all your work, and I look forward to our futures together.
Thanks, Paul. City Clerk, is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So now we will move on to council discussion. Is there anyone who would like to start? Okay,
Yeah.
Councilmember O'Connell, I just saw you too. Sorry, Cliff.
No, no.
I unmuted myself because yes, I do want to speak. It's not that I'm against this proposal or in any respects. I just want to make sure that it's a broad spectrum that we're going to be looking at and that we are not limiting it to park and rec programs, which, you know, is how some of our programs have ended up becoming. And I don't think that's the be all end all to have everything be park and rec oriented, because I think there's a lot of other needs for the community. So I just wanted to put that out there that I'm not against this. I did speak with Supervisor Canepa today, and he's, you know, quite in favor of this program. I just wanted to let my views be known on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Lentz.
Yeah, I agree with you, Terry, about making sure that it's diverse in the activities and the services and describing the needs of seniors, right? There's a lot of areas, and but I feel confident in what Clay had said in regards to tapping into the various departments for their expertise. So, you know, since the Park and Rec department already, you know, has a excellent relationship with our seniors, it makes sense that Park and Rec is the department that handles the majority of as we put this thing together. So that's what I think would be a good direction to go.
Thank you. I'll just add that I think, you know, what's going to come of this is really going to be driven by the focus groups, right? It's going to be driven by feedback. And so we may find that the biggest need is transportation. And so this may end up falling in another department, or the biggest need might come out to be additional programming for seniors at the Sunrise Room. We don't know what that feedback is going to be yet. So it could very well be Park and Rec focused feedback. But I think once we connect with the community and we hear what they have to say, then we can figure out if something needs to be delegated to another department, to a commission or committee, and then go from there. So, you know, I'm concerned that we may just want to throw it to another department right now because it seems like it doesn't fit, and then there's really not the adequate staff to carry it through there. So it seems like the resources have been identified within the Park and Rec department, and they do have a large budget. So I'm sure that they can find some budget in there for staff to handle this. And we will, I think, make adjustments as needed as we go along. So I'm in agreement with Councilmember Lentz in that regard. Does anyone else, Councilmember Mackin, wish to
Thank
say?
you, Madam Mayor. I would just put the emphasis on 21% of the population is a lot. I think that based on Ms. Loxamana, Mr. Boscal's comments, I think there's probably a larger segment of the population, myself included, who would like to volunteer and be involved in this. So although we've already had some community leaders step forward, I would like to see that pool of interested parties opened up for more inclusion. I would also just say that housing, we always hear about jobs, housing balance in California and this big emphasis, and yet not all seniors are still employed or in the jobs market. And somehow that falls through the cracks then with regard to housing. And that to me is a real travesty. Also in terms of activities, even in Brisbane, there's a lot of times there's activities by age. And I think we could use some more cross-generational activities. So I look forward to this, and I think we need to be really aware of including everybody in the community who wants to participate in determining the different areas of focus on this. So I am in favor and appreciate my colleagues' comments.
Okay, I would entertain a motion at this time if there's no other discussion.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, city clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. We will now move on to the public hearing. Item F, self-certification and adoption of the 2023 to 2031 housing element via resolution and finding these actions categorically exempt from environmental review under CEQA guideline sections 15061B3 and 15183D. Okay, do I have staff report, please?
Yes, I'm going to turn the presentation over to senior planners Ayers and Johnson, who were instrumental in the preparation of the document. So I'll turn it over to Ken.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. After an extensive community engagement process that included public surveys, workshops, in-person outreach events, and near monthly star articles over the last year plus, staff is pleased to present the revised 2023 to 2031 housing element to council for adoption. I'll start with a bit of background on the process and history, and then I'll turn the presentation over to Senior Planner Ayers to talk about the proposed changes to the housing element in response to comments from the Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. In the interest of allowing time for public hearing and council questions and discussion, we'll keep this presentation fairly brief. Per state law, cities in the Bay Area had until January 31st, just a couple days ago, plus a 120-day grace period to adopt a housing element, and for that adopted element to be certified as compliant with state law by HCD. So that grace period puts the date of certification to May 31st of this year. Staff initially anticipated using more of the grace period for council to adopt the element following review and response to HCD's comments and HCD's concurrence that the element complies with state law. However, as detailed in the agenda report, a recent interpretation of state law by HCD staff suggests that if a city has not adopted their housing element by January 31st, that city may be considered out of compliance with state law and exposes it to the so-called builder's remedy. That is, housing developers who comply with certain affordability standards may proceed with their projects without regard to local zoning requirements. Based on this recent interpretation and to limit risk to the city, the housing element adoption process is being accelerated ahead of HCD's formal certification. Briefly, for just a little background, as City Council may recall, the draft element was published last August, and that kicked off a formal 30-day public comment period. Following a public hearing and recommendation by the Planning Commission, City Council held a public hearing on October 6th to consider the draft element and take additional public comments. Council then directed staff to submit the draft element for review to HCD, and HCD took 89 of their 90 days as provided by state law for their review. And they submitted written comments to the element's compliance with state law on January 4th, just last month. HCD's comments were attached to City Council's agenda report for tonight's meeting, and staff will discuss those further in just a moment. Then on January 12th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the draft element and considered HCD's comment letter and provided a recommendation to City Council to self-certify and adopt the housing element. That also would include revisions to the element proposed by staff to address HCD's review comments. HCD's January 4th letter outlines several areas for which it believes the city must provide more analysis or clarification to demonstrate compliance with state law. City staff met with HCD on January 20th to discuss how best to provide that additional analysis. And responses to their comments are provided in a matrix, which was included in council's agenda report for tonight. Revisions to the element are shown in red line, and the updated element is posted on the city's website. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senior Planner Ayers to talk a bit more in detail about the proposed revisions.
Great, thanks, Ken. So most of the proposed revisions to chapters 1 through 4 of the element, which address the city's housing needs, resources, constraints, and opportunities, provide additional data and analysis to the element's discussion of the topic areas brought up by HCD. Many programs in chapter 5, the housing plan, were edited to provide more specificity per HCD's request. However, some of HCD's comments related to housing programs would require council to make policy or budgetary decisions, including programs 2B4, 2G1, 2E6, and 5A9, which I'll review briefly here. Proposed edits to program 2B4 addresses HCD's requirement to increase the maximum bed count in an emergency homeless shelter. Currently, emergency shelters are permitted by right in the SCR01 district with performance standards, including a maximum bed count of 12 beds. So the edits to that program would increase the maximum number of beds to 30 beds. This would be adequate to meet the city's need of for homeless services, which we range between 4 to 19 homeless folks per our biannual counts. Program 2G1 commits to studying the existing density transfer program in the Brisbane Acres zoning district to potentially expand allowable receiving sites outside the district boundaries. The study would consider the density maximum that could be transferred, which residential or mixed use districts could be appropriate to receive these moderate density increases, et cetera. Program 2E6 addresses studying the development potential of vacant or underutilized city-owned sites. That study would include inventorying city-owned and housing authority-owned sites, consulting with affordable housing developers, community engagement to identify market potential of sites in the inventory, and other community engagement efforts. So council can consider whether committing to a specific course of action is appropriate for either of those programs at this time, or if the program language should remain as is, allowing for study at a future time. If the programs are retained as is, it's likely HCD will identify the same concerns upon subsequent review of the revised element. A third option is to delete the proposed programs and pursue them outside of the housing element. It's likely HCD would have concerns with that approach as well on subsequent review. And finally, new program 5A9 proposes assembling a stakeholder committee to advise the council and staff on an ad hoc basis regarding engaging with a diverse range of community members on housing issues, especially targeting lower income and special needs households. Of course, formation of such committees is at council's discretion, and we would anticipate the committee meeting no more than quarterly, so not necessarily like a regularly standing committee like some of our others. We also wanted to address a few other topic areas in HCD's January 4th letter. First, HCD's characterization of the Baylands rezoning program as a pipeline project is inaccurate. Pipeline projects refer to development projects with approved entitlements. So staff informed HCD of this statement, of this incorrect statement at our meeting on the 20th. And we've included clarifying language in the revised housing element to make that distinction more clear. And we also want to reiterate at this time that the Baylands specific plan, which is currently undergoing review, will go through an EIR process under CEQA. Second, staff did identify some minor informational updates to respond to HCD's comments. So for additional description of existing land uses, for example, on our sites inventory. Due to time constraints, those edits were not presented to council this evening. Staff intends to complete them administratively prior to submitting the draft to HCD. We also want to acknowledge the receipt of several written correspondence items received before tonight's hearing. And finally, as we previously presented at the council's meeting in October, adoption of the housing element is categorically exempt under the CEQA guidelines. Those exemptions are outlined in the draft resolution. In terms of next steps, should council act tonight to adopt and self-certify the 2023 to 2031 housing element, staff would submit it to HCD for a 60-day review period. If HCD has further substantive comments requiring council review and action, revisions to the adopted element in response to those comments would be brought back to the Planning Commission and City Council as an amendment to the adopted element. The intention is to obtain HCD certification within the 120-day grace period allowed under state law, or May 31st of this year. So in closing, it is recommended that council adopt the revised draft 2023 to 2031 housing element and certify its compliance with state law as described in Appendix F of the element via adoption of the draft resolution attached to the report. And staff's happy to take any questions at this time.
I have a question. What constitutes an emergency for a shelter? Because it's for homelessness. So it's not like it's like a natural disaster or something. So
it's a term, it's differentiated, for example, from like transitional or supportive housing, which might be a longer term situation, perhaps with services attached. So emergency shelters would provide like immediate care for folks who do not have a place to sleep that night.
So they're not temporary then, like emergency as in just a temporary shelter.
It's a permanent shelter.
It's a permanent shelter.
Correct. It's not like in a natural disaster, the Red Cross might set up like an emergency shelter in a gym or something. No, this would be a full-time permanent emergency shelter for folks experiencing homelessness.
With up to 30 beds.
Correct.
Or is it minimum 30 or it's up to 30?
Up to.
Okay. So if council wanted to entertain any of these suggestions from HCD, then would you suggest us not adopting the housing element at this time and exploring the programs listed here and then bringing it back for adoption once programs have been considered, or adopting it now, considering the programs and making an amendment?
We'd recommend adoption now, and then if there are substantive comments from HCD, you bring that back as an amendment.
So your suggestion is to wait. Your suggestion is to wait until HCD makes comments, and then based on those comments, then you study the things that they're suggesting instead of studying proactively, studying the programs listed in the staff report.
So the revised element that was submitted for your review tonight has all of staff's proposed changes to respond to HCD's comments shown in red line. We did not propose changes to two of the programs that I highlighted, the program related to the density transfer, studying the density transfer program, and studying the city-owned vacant or underutilized sites. The other programs that we highlighted, we did propose a change. So the emergency shelter, we did propose a change that's shown in red line. And then the last program regarding the ad hoc advisory committee, that's a new program that's shown in red line. So the intention of highlighting those programs were because they were new or changed in the cases of the two of them. And for the other two, it was more so to highlight staff isn't recommending any changes at this time without further council direction. And I think it's up for discussion tonight in terms of the options that you have before you, which is to move forward with them not changed, to consider whether you're willing to commit to changes that HCD is looking for tonight, or like I said, alternatively to remove them from the program altogether and pursue them kind of separately.
Thank you. We have a hand raised from Councilmember Mackin. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find it interesting over the past actually couple years, we receive a lot of correspondence from Housing Action Coalition and Bay Area Council, and there's repeated references to timelines on the Baylands. And without going into a deep dive, I think it would be helpful for everyone involved or watching this broadcast to understand the difficulty that we as a city are facing in Brisbane with providing timelines on the Baylands. We have Measure JJ that we are required to abide by. And I just think it would be helpful if we could do just a brief reference to some of the difficulties on timelines for the Baylands. Could we please respond to that? Thank you.
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. Again, the Baylands specific plan application is being driven by the property owner. So they're the ones who are preparing this specific plan for consideration by the city. That specific plan will be subject of an environmental impact report, which is already ongoing. There has taken a substantial amount of time, as the council's aware and the community is aware, from when Measure JJ passed. We went through some further community engagement to get some more feedback as to what a final specific plan might look like. And again, it's taken the developer some number of iterations to draft up a specific plan. They did recently submit an updated version. I believe it was just earlier this week, which is being responsive, hopefully, to some of the completeness issues we've had with previous iterations of the plan. So that's one of the drivers, is getting we consider a legally minimally adequate plan to study in the EIR and to put out before the community. Then as you're aware, there are certain technical issues related to the environmental impact report, water supply and whatnot that do take a little more time and analysis to ensure that the CEQA requirements are being met. With that said, staff has commenced the EIR process and we're working on any sections that we felt we could start doing a credible analysis based on the preliminary information to date. So part of the timing is the issue of how long it takes to prepare the EIR when the specific plan project or specific plan application is deemed complete and all those components related to the EIR. So our goal is certainly, we understand there's a legal obligation to complete this rezoning or specific plan to meet our housing element requirements. We're optimistic we'll be able to beat that deadline of 2026 far in advance of that. But again, in terms of can we commit to a specific plan, EIR being released on a certain date at this point, we have some target dates that would allow for that to happen this year, but it is contingent upon performance of the project proponent, as well as solutions to some of these critical environmental issues such as water supply.
So very clearly from what you're saying, there is no delay happening on the part of the city of Brisbane to advance this project.
No, we are actively pursuing the environmental work we can undertake based on the information we have to allow for this environmental impact report to be prepared in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
Yeah, I have quite a few questions related to the HCD letter, but if there are other questions from council members, maybe those questions will get asked.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham, do you have questions at this time?
I just have one question relative to the January 31st, not January 31st, getting the response into them sooner rather than later. Can you explain the benefits and the pitfalls of both approaches? Tom, that one's for you. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, John.
Councilmember Cunningham, I can help with that. So under the law, the housing element plan needs to be adopted by January 31st, 2023 and be compliant with the new law. The penalty for non-compliance, I'll come to the 120-day extension in a second. The penalty for non-compliance is that if a builder comes in, you may recall this, we went over it a couple of years ago. If a builder comes in, applies, meets various criteria, including 20% the applicant's housing being affordable, then they can basically bypass the zoning requirements. The city has very limited ability to stop that project. Now, in this case, as I understand it, staff does not believe that there is a viable threat of such an application being filed and meeting the other requirements it would have to meet. So that threat is not present tonight on February 2nd. But that being said, HCD has taken the position, and at least 2 courts have indicated that it's reasonable, but they have not ruled. I want to stress that. HCD has taken the position that the city saying that they have a 120-day extension period into May is an inaccurate reading of the law, that that's not what it was intended. And therefore, if they don't meet January 31st deadline on the housing element adoption, then we're subject to the so-called builder's penalty, which is what I just described. Cities believe that when that is litigated, and there are lawsuits, that they will prevail. It's unclear. In the meantime, HCD is saying, okay, you may or may not prevail. We don't think you will. You can take the risk if you want, but you're subject to the builder's remedy, meaning bypassing a series of protections, potentially bypassing zoning, and building a project in the city without having gone through all of that. There are 2 projects that I'm aware of, significant projects, trying to use that process down south. I'm not aware, I don't know if Lafayette filed. There may be one in the East Bay, but there's 2 down south that I know exist, and they are already going to court. I mean, they filed their applications right after January 31st. And those cities said they're going to take it to court and have filed.
Thank you, Tom.
So you're saying we're already past the deadline then?
We're past the deadline. I don't believe we have a threat. John, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have an application that has been filed.
That is correct. But to get to the point of sooner than later, is that window, the sooner we get the certification, the adoption, that window closes. That's, right. I think, the important thing, as opposed to waiting. If we wait a month or 45 days or 60 days, then that window for the builder's remedy to apply would be extended.
Exactly. So the adoption tonight cuts that off.
Thanks. That was my only question.
Is there anyone else wishing to ask questions at this time? If not, I will hand it over to Councilmember Lenz. Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks. So on October 6th, the city council has their meeting and they give approval for the draft housing element. And then so that goes to HCD. And then we got this letter from them on January 4th with all these comments. Then you have the meeting with the HCD staff on the 20th of January. So did you feel that meeting was constructive, that you were able to kind of give a more substantive view of where Brisbane is coming from and kind of understanding where HCD was coming from and evaluating our draft housing elements?
I think that's the case. I think we're able to clarify, as Julia pointed out, the factual mischaracterization of the Baylands as a pipeline project, and that has certain implications in their analysis that we expect that should be corrected. We had some discussion with them, and staff can probably elaborate on this a little bit too, is the idea of sort of, if you're not in a position to make a policy or financial commitment at the housing element stage, how do you couch policy and program language that they're comfortable with, that they're showing progress and how you're going to move that forward? They understand in certain cases there may not be the policy direction to proceed with something. So I think we got some, hopefully some fairly nuanced guidance as to how to make them feel more comfortable that when we put policies in that are for consideration, that's not sort of, there's a commitment to go through the process. We can't commit to what the outcome of the process will be, but the wording they're looking for is how we're going to walk through it. And if, 2 years from now, we have a policy to consider something and it's ultimately rejected, we would explain that as part of our housing element annual report. So we're really they're looking for some more concrete wording, and hopefully that was reflected in, I think, some of the changes that staff has made in a redlined version tonight.
Okay, and I'm going to put out an assumption here. I'm sure we're not the only city that's having these back and forth discussions with HCD. It's probably 99% of the cities trying to figure out how to work with this new methodology, right? Because every cycle HCD changes the methodology. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, they mentioned, we're talking about it, that our letter relative to San Mateo County was relatively short. Whatever, 8 pages, or it was shorter than many of the comment letters they were putting out to other jurisdictions within the county. Not that that's any great comfort for us, but in terms of the scale of the issues and the concerns, I don't think what we've seen is atypical or abnormal or particularly severe compared to how they are commenting on other jurisdictions' elements.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so I'd like to just go through a couple of the comments in the HCD letter and just kind of get that out on public record. So, and something that you addressed in our staff report. But on page 1, it talks about the elements should clearly describe how the 5th cycle needs were accommodated with sites and appropriate density, size, and other suitable and available factors. Also talks about the special needs housing, and the element must provide an evaluation of the cumulative effectiveness of past goals. So kind of share with us like how you're dealing with that particular comment.
Sure, happy to. So I'll talk about the discussion that they highlighted for our review and revise. So our evaluation of our last housing element related to the shortfall of sites that we had that we needed to rezone for. So basically what you'll see in the red line is we updated Appendix A, Table A4, to provide more detailed descriptions of the PAOZ1 and PAOZ2 zoning overlays.
And where are those located?
They are located on Park Lane and Park Place.
Okay.
So describing the minimum density, which those are one of the only districts in the city with a minimum density. Most other districts just have maximums. Details on how the ministerial design review would work. So again, for those particular districts, there's no discretionary design review. And just added again, like just more information about site yields and that sort of thing. So that was that's a prime example of the kind of comment that we saw throughout the letter of we need to provide more information to support our analysis, which basically shows that that zoning district has realistic development capacity. We also updated our discussion of the Parkside Plan area in Chapter 3, the sites inventory discussion, to describe in much greater detail current land uses on the site, the current structures on the site, their age, different development interests that's been expressed since adoption of the Parkside Plan in 2017. So we've provided, in our opinion, a pretty robust explanation of how we met the requirements of the government code in adopting that zoning, which again did come out of our shortfall of sites from, I think, the 4th cycle RENA. And I'll yield to Ken on the special needs housing.
Right, so special needs housing, I'm not sure if I'm on the same comment, but Special needs housing goes to emergency shelters, which we mentioned already, transitional supportive housing, by right supportive housing, employee housing. Pardon me?
The review and revise. Sorry, for clarification, Councilmember Lentz, you were asking about comment on the first page under the review and revise section, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So there's kind of crossover in the different chapters of the same types of housing. So we had essentially on special needs housing, we amended chapter 2 and specifically expanded section 2.3. Also a couple other sections in chapter 2 were added, and new cross references essentially to chapter 3 and appendix D. So essentially mostly we bolstered the discussion on those special needs housing.
Okay. And
address your comment.
you felt that was a good suggestion and made our housing element stronger.
Right. Yeah. So anywhere where we could make it more clear how we're compliant.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'm not going to ask that question because Colleen had already brought that one up. Let's see, on page, I guess it's page 3 of the appendix at the bottom, the suitable of non-vacant land. And I know you talked about that, but it says, the city's past experience with converting existing uses to higher density residential development. I mean, we as a city passed Measure JJ, and that, the Baylands was not a site for housing until that measure passed. Isn't that like an indication from the city that we are committed to looking at that and trying to do our fair share?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. The passage of Measure JJ, an amendment of the general plan to allow residential land use where it was previously not permitted. That's a really good example of the city's commitment to taking policy actions. I think that particular comment on our analysis of the suitability of non-vacant sites was asking us to look a little bit more at development trends in terms of building permits issued or entitlements approved, which we do actually in central Brisbane have quite a few examples of sites that were previously developed, say with a single family home that were then redeveloped to 3 or 4 units. So I think you're on point in terms of the Baylands being that kind of policy commitment that we can fall back on. And then we did provide additional information related to actual development trends that kind of show on other sites than the Baylands that there are trends to redevelop smaller properties with higher density.
Okay, great. Let's see. And then there's I guess it's on, let's see, 1, 2, 4, I guess the 5th page regarding ADUs. It said HCD discovered several areas where we were not consistent with state ADU law. I'm assuming that we updated those to be in compliance with state law.
We have a program in our work plan for first quarter of this year to update our ADU ordinance again.
Okay.
We'll probably be updating our ADU ordinance annually, as we have been for the past 4 years. So yes, that's actually a program we did add to the housing to chapter 5 as well, to annually update and review our ADU ordinance.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, under housing programs, it says you include a program which sets forth a schedule of actions during the planning period, and then kind of continues on, the policies and achieve the goals and objectives of the housing element, and then continues to have a beneficial impact in the planning period and achieve the goals and objectives of the housing element. Programs should have specific commitment toward housing outcomes. So, it's difficult right? Because, you know, a lot of our housing opportunities are in private hands. But you know, what things have we put into our new housing element to kind of address that? And I know that's difficult, but yeah.
So that comment from HCD, they had outlined several programs that they wanted us to provide more specific commitments to. So a lot of, I'll highlight maybe one for an example. So program 2E1, which relates to the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan that we are concurrently working on. That is going to provide priorities and a path forward for spending affordable housing funds. In HCD's perspective, the original program that we had related to adopting the plan, we needed to be a little more specific as to maybe what the plan would be achieving, what path it would be creating for us to actually build affordable housing, right? So they wanted us to kind of fill in the gaps there, which we did, and provided revisions in redline text to provide more info as to not only what the Affordable Housing Strategic Plan will achieve, but the timing and commitment to implementing its recommendations. So unless you want me to elaborate a little bit more, I think that was just a good example.
Yeah, no, I think that's
our
perfect.
response.
And this is just my last, you know, question, and it goes back to the staff report and, you know, kind of teeing this up. You know, we've hired Eco Northwest to create that affordable housing strategic plan. And so, yeah, it would have been nice to have had it already as we're going through this process. But when do you think that will come before the full council for us to have that robust engagement with the community and you know, hopefully adopt that strategic plan?
I believe we're on track for at least presenting it to council. And John, please correct me if I'm wrong, at least by May of this year.
Hey, Julia, do you think we'll have a draft end of Q1, early Q2, and then obviously there's a review process? Is that the schedule? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And I'm just, you know, curious. I mean, you know, to do one of these strategic plans, I mean, this isn't a requirement that anybody put on us. This is something that the city of Brisbane said, this is important for us as a community. We want to do this. So this was something that we initiated ourselves, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lentz. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing if there's not any other council questions. City Clerk, is it possible to just use the Zoom timer for all speakers? Because I think it may be less obvious at the podium for those speaking at the podium. I do have a number of slips here. And I just ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes so we can cycle through all of the speakers. And if you need to come back to the podium, you can. I am receiving a text here saying that channel 27, no one can hear us. So no volume at all.
There's no sound.
No.
I think we're still able to continue through the technical difficulties with the broadcast as long as there's another opportunity for the members of the public to hear
through Zoom and through YouTube.
Zoom and through YouTube.
Should we have a 5-minute break for technical checkup?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Let me just mute. Okay. So. Okay, I think we're good. Yep.
Okay. We're now on to the public hearing. As a reminder,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
before we begin, if I can clarify for those in the viewing audience, remote. For those of you on channel 27 Comcast who are not seeing a video or not hearing the audio, the clerk is going to provide a phone number that you can dial in on. This is just old school phone line or cell phone, and listen and also interact. You'll have the ability to do both if you have comments. Madam Clerk.
So the information is also located in the City Council agenda, but the call-in number is 1-669-900-9128. And the webinar ID is 991-9362-8666.
And the passcode is 123456. It is in the agenda. Under Zoom webinar, you'll see a dial-in and all three of those numbers are there. We're also trying to have it posted on the channel. In addition, you can still participate for those already doing so, but if you're not there and you have access to the internet, you can participate by Zoom or by YouTube. Those are also in the agenda, but the city clerk will identify them.
And the address is youtube.com/Brisbane CA. youtube.com/Brisbane CA.
This by guaranteeing that the public has the ability to interact with the meeting and listen to the meeting. If they choose not to interact, allows the city council to proceed as usual and take action as it desires. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
City Hall is also open for anyone who wants to come in person at 50 Park Place. Okay, so we're going to move on to public comment. Again, I have a lot of slips, so please respect the 2-minute time limit. And do we have does this screen have to stay up because there's no audio? Okay, so let me know when city staff is ready with the Zoom timer. Our first speaker is Paul Buscal. You can approach and then just wait. Let's get the timer up and then if you could just wait until that's there. Okay.
Okay, so Paul Buscal, Brisbane resident. I'm concerned about the Brisbane acres. When we talk about already zoned areas and rezoning areas to be rezoned. I'm concerned about the density transfer areas being expanded regarding the current Brisbane acres, close to 50 now that were purchased through matching funds from the Coastal Conservancy and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And within that agreement that they give you, when they give you the funds, they also give you the opportunity to pay the funds back. If a governing body, that would be 3 of you, decided to change the distinction of the Brisbane acres, because as they are now, they are put into deeded open space. Well, to the casual observer, deeded open space seems like a good thing, when in fact, the term open space only means public property. So those acres have to be protected and preserved through protected open space, because the city of Brisbane owns 3 of those acres for the water department. And at the very top, almost to the ridge above the acres, is one of their parcels. So why would you need 3 parcels for the water department for water tanks if you weren't going to build a southeast ridge. I'm just saying that they're not protected enough. Open space doesn't give them protection. Protected open space does. So a governing body couldn't change the distinction at their will. That's all it would take is 3 of you to decide that you want to have a southeast ridge in Brisbane. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, next speaker is Dana Dilworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm asking you to not pass the general plan amendment and findings under threat of a builder's remedy. It sounds like extortion to me. The public trust is being betrayed. The city staff, council, commissions, builders, their councils have all openly conspired with the state to take away our public lands and resources. Hurry up, vote on this tonight. Land use covenants, restricted use for safety and conservation, needs for open space as well as sustainability means nothing anymore. I hoped for greater leverage with the Baylands developer than the minimum housing, low-income housing after supporting $3 million of public funds for cleanup studies. I object to the tone and consolidation of the low-income assisted housing along the rail tracks as the uncirculated map suggests. I suggest you take that map out of Baylands. Can we talk about integrating special needs and low-income housing folks into the community rather than zone them? Don't pass these regulations tonight without the public's 30-day review of the corrections yet to be formulated by staff. We have the right to know its contents before it becomes laws. 4 days to review a packet of this immensity is insufficient. CEQA requires current environmental condition assessment. Those that would have not been properly assessed are recent storms, which impacted our infrastructure, new studies on sea level rise, which may impact the park overlays, new land use restrictions on VW&R, changes in live work patterns due to COVID, and high-speed rail determinations. Make certain of compliance with the general plan with necessaries completed before you approve the document for a comprehensive approach to all impacts. Do not incorporate the developer's wish list with details that will be disclosed at a later date. What is an amenities center? There is no such definition in our general plan.
Dana, do you have a lot more left?
Just
okay.
Little, thank you. Is that a Bayshore sanitation or is it a euphemism for a capped toxic spot? Please do tell. CEQA requires alternatives. No mention of simple solutions because you were only to look at ones that had constraints like liveaboards, off-grid RV parks, or pod hotels. I'm glad the HCD brought this to your attention. However, to publish the language that you publish the language before it becomes law. You are creating an unfair advantage to developers who have no sense of community. Stand up for local control. Come up with better plan, an integrated plan. Assume responsibility, not just developers as being the one giving us reasonable housing and reasonable arena numbers. Please put some humanity into this. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next speaker is Tom Hines.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. I think you all know that Dana's only concern is the health and safety of this community. Yet, This plan is so egregious, it has made our family sick. I vowed not to address this council once, but now that it's making us sick, I have to address you again. The last 4 days, Dana has been through hell. I've seen her come out to the living room just trembling. Once I had to hold her to calm her down. I've seen her vomit over and over again after trying to decipher this document that is so egregious. And you guys think it's okay? You know, when she told me there was, what, $2-3 million of public taxpayer money to clean up their private property, it's insane. It's ludicrous. I recall that part of the purchase agreement was that they would clean up. I remember them hemming and hawing over the level of cleanup that they might have to do. And now what? They've gone to Sacramento and lobbied so that the taxpayers pay for their cleanup? How many of you have gone to Sacramento to lobby for us, your constituents? Simple show of hands. How many of you have gone to Sacramento to lobby on this? Okay, right. I'm asking about this thing that you're going to hopefully not approve tonight. You know, guys, it took 15 years for you to acknowledge that we were right on Sierra Point. I hope it doesn't take that long to acknowledge we were right on Measure JJ. And I hope you realize tonight this is wrong. And go to Sacramento. Don't pass this tonight. Go to Sacramento and lobby on our behalf, your constituents. You were elected to serve the public, not the developer. Join these other cities. Join these other cities in stopping this nonsense. It's a right-wing takeover of public property.
Thank you.
Thank you from one of those people.
Okay, our next speaker is Greg Vilken.
I think I qualify as one of those people, being the developer. Yeah, so thank you, Council. My name is Greg Vilken. I'm with the Baylands Development, 2201 Bayshore Boulevard. I come here tonight to speak in favor of the housing element plan. One of the things that's critical is that we create housing for all, and the only way to do that is to increase the housing stock. We are proud to play our role of at the Baylands of creating 1,800 to 2,200 new housing units. And we have a plan that we believe we're on track for to have the specific plan, the development agreement, all of the CEQA work done by the end of 2024, which is 2 years from now. I want to address one comment that Council Member Mackin asked and John answered. We submitted the specific plan a year ago. We've now gone through 3 iterations of the specific plan and answered a lot of the questions that have come up with more research, so that we are now in a position that we submitted the final plan, what we consider the final plan, last week. The EIR was started the research started last September. And so we all believe that we are on track to be able to have a good public process and go all the way through this over the next 2 years. The reason that 2 years is important is that would allow us to start construction in the beginning of 2025. As everyone is aware, we have 3 years of environmental cleanup and installation of infrastructure. And then at that point is when we can start going vertical. The one thing that it is very tight, but if we stay on schedule, we can complete the 1,800 units within the plan cycle, because one of the things that you're self-certifying is that you can develop these and have a good, that you can develop these before the end of the plan period, which is 2031. It also says in the plan that you would not approve the specific plan until 2026. I just want to be clear that if that doesn't happen by the end of 2024, we will not be able to complete the housing during the plan cycle. So thank you very much. And again, applaud you for taking the initiative seriously.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Keith Diggs.
Good evening, Council. My name is Keith Diggs. I am the attorney on staff at UMD Law. I'm not here to yell at you. Relax. I don't have a lawsuit drafted against any of you. I'm as bewildered by the housing element process as I think everyone in this room is. Honestly, it's a 41,000 word statute. Produces a lot of confusing documents, and we probably disagree on whether more housing needs to get built here. But there's no need to rush this plan tonight. If someone was going to file a builder's remedy application, which I disagree strongly is a penalty of any kind, that affordable housing is bad, it would have happened yesterday. We've been publicizing this for a lot. So I just encourage you to take the time and work with HCD and get a compliant housing element. And if you want to talk to me when it's over, I'll be around.
Thanks. Okay, City Clerk, is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
We have a few hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, we're going to go through the hands raised through the Zoom, and then anyone who's spoken already will get a chance to make another comment. Who's next?
It looks like we'll go from the top of the list. Louise Morante.
Okay.
Or Louie.
Can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Louis Morante. I'm Vice President of Public Policy with the Bay Area Council. I, in my role, have convened, let me start off with saying I've worked on state legislation now for the better part of a decade, including much of the legislation that has created the current cycle of RHNA. The council has also convened many of our members to comment on housing elements, has developed a three-part plan for addressing housing elements. And it was a challenge for us to comment on your housing element because so much of the housing element is contingent on the success of the Baylands. In general, state law requires that when local governments put plans in place, that they have accountable timelines on those plans, that there's some degree of reliability and consistency across the plans. And so when so much of the housing element is just from the Baylands, we have to take those metrics and apply them specifically to the city's review process for the Baylands. And I have a somewhat different perception than city staff on Measure JJ. It's well known at HCD and among state advocates that Measure JJ was the result of actually a force from Senator Hill, who had threatened stronger legislation against Brisbane, and that the city council was quite reluctant to see housing progress on that site. And so in the absence of strong commitments to reviewing the Baylands and not necessarily approving it, but at least moving documents forward, I think HCD is quite concerned that there's no certainty that this project will develop in the next 8-year period, which is the statutory requirement that you must meet tonight. I think in light of the fact that this document very likely does not meet the statutory requirement, I encourage you to go back and work on ways in which you can increase project certainty at the Baylands site. Again, not necessarily with the expectation that you approve the project, but with the expectation that you provide timely and concise review on the project and establish a timeline by which you could take an action on it. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have anyone else?
We have a Jeremy Levine.
Okay. Go ahead. Hold on. Let's pause that timer until our speaker is speaking. Jeremy, are you there?
Jeremy. Let's go with Ellie Sapirman for now.
Okay, we'll come back to Jeremy. Ellie, are you with us?
I am with you. Hi.
Allie. Okay.
Yeah, hi. My name's Allie Saperman. I'm with the Housing Action Coalition. I know you received our letter. Just want to note just a few kind of inconsistencies that I'm hearing that I have kind of concern about, specifically regarding the Baylands development. Want to kind of echo something that Lewis was just saying, that it's kind of unusual that a housing element has every part of their arena, like more than 75% of their arena in one site. And because of that, it is very, very critical that there are concrete timelines for development. We heard from the developer tonight, and I know this is something that staff mentioned before, that the timelines are on the basis of the developer. We heard from the developer tonight that they have clear timelines, that they've submitted their proposals to staff. I imagine there's time needed to review those, in which probably should not certify the housing element tonight until that plan is reviewed by staff and that those timelines are included in the housing element. If we're waiting on the developer and the developer has provided that information, it's important that those concrete timelines make it into the housing element. Beyond that, in order to ensure that we are meeting our RHNA targets and that this project is developed within this RHNA cycle, it's important beyond adding concrete timelines that they, in order to adopt the Baylands, that we actually expedite some approvals, expedite relevant permitting, expedite supplemental environmental review. It's also really valuable to offer concessions and waivers to the Baylands pursuant to density bonus law. I am saying all of these things because I think this is a great site, and obviously city staff has emphasized that this is an incredible site for housing. So if we're going to put all our eggs in one basket here to develop the Baylands, then we really need to make sure that happens. If not, we're going to be at the end of the RHNA cycle and we're not going to see any movement towards RHNA goals in Brisbane. And if we want to look at ways for Brisbane to get sued, that's the way to do it. So let's not do that. Let's take some time. Let's codify this. Let's have concrete timelines. And let's move housing forward for Brisbane. Thank you.
Thanks, Ally. Do we have Jeremy back with us?
Yes, thank you. I had my Wi-Fi crash spontaneously. Just what I was saying, I am the policy manager for the Housing Leadership Council. I've reviewed every housing element in San Mateo County, including Brisbane's. And I have also read every HCD review letter sent to a city in this county. Just for your information, getting a short review letter does not correlate with the significance of HCD's comments. Brisbane got some of the most substantial comments from HCD of any city, some of the most customized comments. They use a lot of boilerplate language, but they were pretty specific with Brisbane. Just big picture, Brisbane has made some important changes to the housing element, especially on the Baylands. It's a big improvement that you are committing to approve the project by right. It's a big improvement that you're committing to ensure adequate utilities. The timeline is still too long, as others have said. The incentives are still too few for a project that has a long history of being delayed by the city and a long public record of actions being taken that delay the project. And I think that putting all the eggs in one basket is not a good housing element strategy. I think that Brisbane, even with the Baylands in a perfect scenario, may well be pushed by that State Department of Housing and Community Development to plan for housing elsewhere. So I think you probably will adopt tonight, but when HCD comes back to you with more comments, I hope that you will be prepared to consider more policies as well. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay. Do we have anyone else on Zoom wishing to speak?
Michelle Salmon.
Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Brisbane City Council. California has a housing problem? Yes, because we have a population problem. And that is the fact. And we will continue to have a population problem until we get that under control. Well, Brisbane has 20 square miles of area. We only have about 3 square miles of land, and a lot of that is quite steep. and not necessarily safe to build on, as exhibited by the massive landslides we've have experienced in the past and very recently, including a massive slide in Buckeye Canyon on New Year's Eve that brought down at least 8 football fields worth of material. RENA numbers, the reason why 75% of them are on the Baylands is because that's land that's available. And those with no practical local knowledge or history are all too anxious to push housing in Brisbane. I am sick to death of housing know-nothing advocates that think we can just build anywhere, anytime to the max. That's just not feasible and not reasonable. And the reason we delayed so long in approving housing on the Baylands is because it is extremely toxic landfill. Yes, there are remediation plans such as putting the toxins under the roads, etc. But is this really where you want to build? You know, hey, put it all on the Baylands. That's fine. It's a big, wide open space. You know, it's better than having 8 football fields worth of the mountain come down on your housing developments. So, I just feel like saying, back off, let us do what's the best for everybody. It's not a NIMBY situation. It's a personal safety situation for the people you expect to live there. And I think that our council has been extremely responsible in making these decisions. And I wish the housing advocates would educate themselves better about the actual conditions on the ground instead of reading a bunch of statistics. I'm sick of it. California needs to back off and let local legislation make the decisions based on what they know on the ground in their territory. Thank you. And thank you, City Council, for your consideration and wisdom and judgment in making decisions cautiously and carefully for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have anyone else?
No, Madam Mayor, but I did want to note for the record that written correspondence was received from Glenn Fieldman after the cutoff time of 5 o'clock. And that she wanted to say that council proposes to exempt Baylands housing from additional review under CEQA. I think this is a bad idea. And we also received correspondence from Danny Ames this evening. And would you like to make public comment?
I just sent.
Come to the podium, please.
I just sent San Francisco Port's plan to deal with sea level rise. They've actually did a study and they've engineered ideas and something that you guys may want to look at or have our staff look at to deal with sea level rise in conjunction with San Francisco. That's all.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so I know that there are some members of the public wishing to speak again. So I'm going to ask that because this is your second time that you keep your comments brief and concise to 1 minute, if that's possible, because it is 10 o'clock and I'm trying to get through this agenda by our 10:30 deadline. So Paul, would you like to come up again? And hold on, let's wait until city staff can adjust our timer, please.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I've brought this up many, many years ago, and I'll bring it up one more time tonight. And I think it's really important to look at this from a feasibility standpoint. Why don't we offer the Baylands a density transfer to some degree and have the land transferred up in the industrial park like we've talked about years ago to have connectivity from the ridge into Brisbane with another neighborhood up there. You know, it's not too late to look at that. It's not toxic. It's not prone to liquefaction. It's already got 90% of the infrastructure that would need to be brought up there. We could do a higher density housing. And as far as the water goes for the development, 2/3 of the water requirement is for firefighting capabilities. We don't need potable water. Therefore, we don't need to go into an agreement, or the Baylands people don't need to go into an agreement with any water district if we're providing a non-potable tank with flushed water from our existing system, which we have to do, we have to flush it down the drains to keep the chloramines going. Oh, so if we could look at possibly transferring the site, and these are things that could happen way sooner than later. We're not on a toxic site. The cleanup would be way different than what we'd expect for a housing development. And our school district, first and foremost, would benefit by having this development within the Brisbane School District. Thank you.
Paul. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak either for the first or second time?
We have a hands raised from Ali. I'm not sure if this was just she wants to speak again or
Ali.
My hand was just never unraised because I got thrown around in the queue, but I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ali. Anyone else? Okay. Can I get a first and second to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Okay, now we have council discussion. Is there anyone wishing to make a comment first?
You know, I have some questions for
You have-
staff.
You have questions?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
Councilmember
do.
Lentz.
Thank you, Madison. So, so the amount of units required to identify for the housing element, what's that number again? 15.
The total is 1588.
1588. All right. And then how many units currently exist in Brisbane?
Just
Approximately.
approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 400. Oh, you mean existing? built.
Existing units, yes.
Closer to 2,100.
About 2,100. Okay. Okay. And then, all right. So say 1,620. So about, we have currently about 500 more units than what is being asked of us in this current housing element.
76% of our, that would be 76% of our.
Mhm.
If you wanted the math.
Okay, you've done the math.
I just did.
All right, thank you. So I'm curious, we talked about the methodology, always changing. And so the current methodology was based on the Bay Area 2050 plan. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then, so in that 2050 plan, it had a lot of places that, that in that plan it deemed that you could put housing, like the Martin substation and the current location where High Speed Rail wants to put their rail yard.
And the tank farm.
Yes. Now the tank farm though, so the High Speed Rail maintenance facility that was taken out, Martin substation was taken out, but they left in the tank farm in the methodology 2050 plan, correct?
That's my recollection. It was all based on the PDA, the priority development area, which encompasses all of the Baylands. I don't know that they got into the idea of parsing out. I think there was some discussion about them leaving Recology in or taking Recology out, the tank farm. It's not that granular. They give you a very gross number over a gross piece of property, and the mathematical calculation of why we ended up with such a what a lot of people would consider an excessive yield was based primarily on the PDA metrics.
It's based on that. Yeah. And I remember, we had a meeting, Tara and I, we had that meeting with the executive director of MTC, right? And just looking at those maps, and you're right, John. It's, it wasn't so granular, but, when you do that overlay, it did cover those places. But obviously we can't, state in our housing element that the tank farm is a viable location. We would just, but then again, that particular site, because it was in the Bay Area 2050, was part of that methodology that
that then churned out these numbers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Council discussion. Is there anyone wishing to start? Councilmember Mackin, why don't you go first?
I think one thing I find troubling is hearing references to the Brisbane Council did this in the past. The Brisbane Council that you're looking at seated today is not the Brisbane Council that was here 10 years ago. A lot has changed in the Bay Area. A lot has changed with the specific plan for the Baylands. A lot has changed of attitudes. A lot has changed. We have massive droughts. A lot has changed. So I would appreciate everyone, council, anyone tuning into this, housing advocates, public, please, let's stop referencing the past and let's deal with the present and the future, because that's where we're headed. And what we have before us is a lot of edits that have been proposed by staff with a lot of work, and I appreciate that. The question is whether or not to approve those edits tonight or to not submit this and see what happens. I'm not very comfortable with that. I followed the builder's remedy in Santa Monica, which resulted in almost an entire city block there, ending up with 5 very large buildings, which maybe Santa Monica can absorb that. Brisbane is small. I would rather submit the housing element with the edits. And as some of the housing proponents have indicated, HCD may come back and want more. Well, we can talk about that. There's various suggestions about developer incentives. We can consider that, but I consider it imperative to get this submitted in a timely fashion. So that's my feeling on it. I'm not saying it's a perfect document. We're not living in a perfect world. We've just heard a discussion of all the forces and whether the arena allocations are accurate. I'm just being a realist, and I think we have to look at it that way. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for doing the best you can with a crap situation. The RENA process is flawed. We all know that. We know that a lot of the lands that they have deemed suitable and, went into the methodology are not suitable for housing and never will be. And I wanted to sort of address some of the concerns that the housing advocates brought to us, that we were delaying or putting too many restrictions on the developer at the Baylands. We've been doing our jobs to move forward any proposals they bring to us. They haven't met all the criteria as of earlier this week when they resubmitted, and they may still not have all the criteria in place for us to move forward with the environmental impact reports and studies. But we are acting in good faith to move forward on those as they come to us, and working in concert with the developer the best possible. I wish we didn't have to cow to the state and put the burden of 76% growth on Brisbane. It seems unreasonable, and I don't think that if San Francisco was asked to have 76% growth, they would stand for it either. But it's something that we can't really put ourselves at a higher risk of being targeted by unreasonable requests from the HCDs, from the housing people, or from anyone else. So I think we're going to have to move forward with this. It's an ugly vote, but I think it's something that we're going to need to move forward with to and work with it within the constraints that we have. Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz.
First, just want to say thanks to staff for the job that they've done. I believe that staff cares about the housing situation in our town and wants to do the best. And I think that we as a council are in support of that. When the citizens passed Measure JJ, we had that choice. And, that was going to double the size of our city. And we looked at, okay, what is the responsible thing to do? And we as a community came together and we passed it. And so now as we move forward to this housing element, that's where the units are supposed to be, because that's what we as a community decided to do. I don't like the methodology that was used. I didn't think that was appropriate. I thought it was, I thought it was kind of a slap in the face to our city after we passed that measure, and then identifying sites in the 2050 plan that just are not appropriate. But that's what generated the numbers. But those numbers are still short of what we approved as a city. I appreciate staff's commitment to identifying the comments from HCD and putting forth responsible solutions to it. Doesn't mean that it's going to pass mustard with them. We'll find out. But it is appropriate that we do pass this tonight and put it in the hands of HCD to provide additional comments. These things are back and forth, and you hope that in the end, by taking public comment, taking comments
Hold on,
from
excuse me.
the housing
Hold on,
rights
hold on, Cliff.
advocates.
Tom, I'm giving you a
which-
warning. Please stop disrupting this meeting. Because it's making it difficult for me, and I'm sure the audience and the rest of our council to focus on what Councilmember Lentz is saying. So I'm giving you a warning. Please stop.
I appreciate the comments that you have sent us. I've read them. Of course, we listened to them tonight. This is what you live for, right? This is what you care about. And I value that. We're the representatives of our city, and we care about our community. And so, but I think we're on the same page of wanting to create more housing, more affordable housing for everyone. And so, as you said, Terry, it's not always a perfect set of conditions, or maybe you said that, Colleen, but this is what we're dealt with. And I think we're moving forward in the right direction to take what we have and, have an housing element that we can hopefully work with the developer on. He made some comments tonight, and we're going to hold him to that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham?
Thank you. Thank you to staff for all the hard work. First of all, I would like to say that some of the people who are not Brisbane residents who called in to speak had their facts completely backwards. They haven't been paying attention to how fast and hard everybody has been working on this, including the developer. There are other things that have gotten in the way of things moving forward that are beyond all of our control. The other thing that people probably don't understand is that the RENA numbers that we were given for Bay Area 2050 included putting housing on the tank farm, including putting housing at Recology. My question to them was, This is San Francisco's dump you want us to build on. Is San Francisco going to take their dump back and put it back in their backyard? So we have been asked to do some incredibly unrealistic things, ridiculous, beyond comprehension. So I do appreciate what House staff has done. I do appreciate what all of our city council, planning commission, and everybody else in our community has trusted us to do. I trust them, they trust us, and we need to move forward with this. So we are not putting ourselves in any more jeopardy. I don't like it, but this is what we've got.
Thank you. So I am in agreement with the rest of my council. I think to not move forward opens us up to liability of some kind. And I think it's a show of good faith to HCD to move forward. While I appreciate all of the different suggestions, I think amending this outside of the suggestions that HCD has made doesn't seem like an appropriate course of action. We could go above and beyond to make all these amendments that people have suggested make this better or ensure that housing gets built. I'll have that conversation with HCD. They're going to tell me what they think is the appropriate course of action. 1,588 units is huge for a city of 2,100 units. And we haven't shied away from our responsibility. As Councilmember Lentz mentioned, the Baylands will have 1,800 to 2,200 units. That's far beyond the 1,588 that we've been charged to build. And that's just that one project. This council is constantly discussing how we might be able to create more affordable housing. But as a resident mentioned, we only have so much land to work with. The Baylands will be 1,800 to 2,200. That's determined. And then any more housing units beyond that we have to designate sites. There's only so much land that the city itself owns. And for a lot of the property we do have, we are already talking about how we could put affordable housing for low-income residents. So that's always been a priority of ours. And anything beyond that is we're relying on private developers to do their part too. So there's only so much housing that we can create out of thin air. So it is my desire to move forward as well with the housing element as written. And I am sure we will probably have to have another discussion about this anyway. But moving forward prevents us from being a sitting duck for that developer liability as mentioned. So I have a hand raised from the audience. If you're going to come up, I need you to keep it to 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I have there has been a misstatement here about having to accept the RENA. There is a potential lawsuit out there available that cities are being asked to enjoin, and it is part of the public record. And I still would ask that you take that map out where you are putting all the low and moderate income housing on the rail yard. That is blasphemous.
Thank you. Okay. So do I have a motion from the council?
I just have a quick question before we make that motion. So there's a couple of things that you're going to just refine. Does that need to be part of the motion that we have? So I didn't see it in what the recommendation is.
It's in the resolution before you tonight. It's listed under the recitals.
Okay, so if I guess maybe this is for you, Tom. So if we just made the motion to self-certify and adopt the draft housing element, it's going to cover what staff is going to do.
Yes, that's the way it's written. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Then I'll make that motion then to self-certify and adopt the draft 2023-2031 housing element, the adoption of the draft resolution provided in attachment 3.
Thank you, Councilmember Lentz. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Okay. We're now moving on to new business, item H. Consider approving a resolution for the 2023 California Climate Investment CCI Fire Prevention Grant Funding Opportunity through CAL FIRE for vegetation management and wildfire preparedness. Clyde Preston is here from North County Fire. Clyde, given the lateness of the hour, if you could be as concise as possible through your staff report, that would be much appreciated.
Yep. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, basically what we're going to be doing is applying for 2 grants through the California Climate Investments. And one is for public education for the city of Brisbane. And also the other one is for roadway fuel reduction. So part of the formality for us to even submit this application is we do need to have a resolution from the council. There's no guarantee we're going to get this, but it is a formality. And we will be submitting, if approved tonight, we'll submit this with all of the other paperwork that's required for the California Climate Investment proposal process as well.
Thank you. Council questions?
Nope.
No.
Okay, public comment. Do I have anyone wishing to speak on this item? Paul Buscal?
Thank you. Hi, Clyde. The other evening, they went over accepted the report for last year regarding the fuel reduction on vegetation management. And I asked if you could also include in your inspections of properties and private properties as well as industrial properties with big trees, large trees that are dangerous. You know, a lot of the trees that have fallen down weren't dead or dying. They were perfectly healthy trees. And right near your fire department, that huge eucalyptus tree fell down right near the entrance to Brisbane Fire Department. You know, that could have went the other direction and landed on equipment or firefighters. So, you know, our public right-of-ways need to be looked at. We have huge eucalyptus trees that are a huge danger, not just for fire threat. So if you're applying for grants, can we also apply for grants to help property owners that have large trees that are dangerous to other property owners and the public right-of-way? And while we may not be able to do much with public property, private property, we can with public property. So I'm asking you as the lead to look at dangerous trees as a real serious issue in our community and do something about those trees. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Oh, we have one raised hand from Michelle Salmon.
Okay.
It is often difficult to tell when a tree is dangerous. With the conditions of the drought that we've suffered for the last several years, you know, root structures have shrunk while the upper canopy has not. And when there's an imbalance between the surface area of the roots and the surface area of the trees, the tree becomes a danger, whether it appears healthy or not. So I just like to say that it's not always easy to tell. And when we have an extreme event like we just had, where the canopy of the tree gets a lot of water and the soil gets a lot of water, it points up the fact that the root ball does not equal the mass of the tree and the tree goes over. So it's not always easy to tell whether a tree is healthy or not, especially in climate change conditions that we've been suffering. So I appreciate, Clyde, that you're going for this grant to try to mitigate the trees that we know are sick, and have a better urban canopy for those that aren't. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay. is there a member of the council wishing to discuss this, or are we ready to move forward with a motion?
I don't need to discuss.
No
Make a motion.
discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the 2023 California Climate Investment CCI Fire Prevention Grant, funding opportunity through CAL FIRE for vegetation management and wildfire preparedness.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. City managers report on upcoming activities.
This will be brief this evening.
I don't think your mic is on.
It says it's.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay, it's on. I hear it.
We'll get the screen up. Seven Mile House will have 165th birthday on Saturday. There'll be history talks, food and drink specials, and first 200 people will have adobe and rice bowls. The second item, just to thank everyone who came out this Tuesday for the Sierra Point Open Space and Parks and Master Plan Workshop at City Hall. If you couldn't attend, we will be having other workshops, and also you can visit the brisbaneca.org/projects to place your input on the various items that are being looked at this point in time. This process will have many more steps before it comes back to City Council ultimately for review. So there will be plenty of opportunity for participation and input.
Okay. Mayor Council Matters, item B. Did you want to do this one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. We've had a request from a property owner at Sierra Point. I do want to indicate that the property owner does currently have an application before the city. It is going to be quite some time before that comes before the Planning Commission and Council, but they have asked to meet with the mayor and city staff. So that was what was before us here tonight. As an alternative, they could come to one of your subcommittees and make a presentation there. I know the Sierra Point subcommittee, I don't believe you met with HealthPeak. It is HealthPeak. I don't think you met with them, but we did discuss their project at one point in time. So that's another alternative.
Yeah, they emailed me directly asking for a meeting, also to give an update on what's going on with who's leasing, and what's going on with their development. And while it's in my purview to accept that meeting, I felt it was in light of transparency, I felt that it was important to come to all of you and let you know that that request was made, so that you would know about it beforehand. And if there was any concern, that you would have the opportunity to voice that. But staff would be present, and then it's my intention to also ask that they either meet, depending on what we discuss, that they either meet with the Economic Development Subcommittee, or as Clay suggested, Sierra Point Subcommittee. So I wanted to get input from all of you before I accepted a meeting with them.
So I have a question, if I may, Madam Mayor. And this may be for legal. They have presented to the Sierra Point Design Guidelines Subcommittee. And so that would be Councilmember Lentz and I, and having a third member hear that, as long as it's separate from that subcommittee, would not present any legal conflicts.
No, it's under the free speech clause. As long as they're meeting with you individually and you're all not discussing your thoughts on it privately, you're well within your legal rights, as are they.
Okay. And is that and this is more for staff, have there been any substantial changes to their proposal since they initially made their proposal to, or daylighted their proposal to Councilmember Lentz and I at the subcommittee?
I believe it's substantially the same.
Okay.
I
Thank
think I
you.
have to make a motion to extend the meeting to, let's say, 10:40.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham. Aye. Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. If there's a member of the council that would like to attend that meeting with me, happy for anyone else to join.
No, I'm certainly fine with the mayor taking that meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Madison, and for full disclosure and transparency. You're right; it's in your purview to do that. Clay, you had mentioned, that one of the subcommittees could also have a meeting with them as well. I think just for the to continue in that kind of transparency way, that either economic development or the Sierra Point subcommittee should also, have a similar update, not with you, of course, because that would be 3, but, separate, I think it would be appropriate. So how we would set that up, either one is fine with me.
Well, maybe after we have that meeting, we can better determine what subcommittee is most appropriate, or maybe they come and make a presentation to the full council. If what we discuss is not much different than what you've already discussed, you and Councilmember O'Connell, then maybe it makes sense for it to go to economic development. So if there's no resistance, I'll go ahead and schedule a meeting with them. Staff will be present. And if at some point a council member would like to join me, you're more than welcome. Of course, just one of you. And then I will report out at the council meeting following, whenever I have a meeting with them, about next steps.
Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
may.
Yes.
Just by way of interest, when you meet with them, I would
Mhm.
ask why they would not want to make a presentation to the full council. Because at the time you go between subcommittees, you're reaching 3 council members out of 5. Why would they not want to make a presentation just to the full council and get it over with?
Yeah, they may want to.
Okay.
So,
You
we
could
can
convey that, please.
we can present that as an option when we discuss coordinating. We may just say, hey, why don't you just come present to all of us at once? So, but with your blessing, I'll have a conversation with them and then we can determine the best course of action. So I'll go ahead and move on to countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Before we have a report out, I believe there was a request for someone to replace Councilmember O'Connell on the Sierra Point Park and Open Space Subcommittee. And okay, I'm glad you're nodding because I was hoping that wasn't a surprise to you, Councilmember O'Connell. And is there anyone who is interested in taking that position?
Madam Mayor, Councilman O'Connell, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're just asking to be replaced for the purposes of the Sierra Point master planning process, not permanently replaced.
I am asking not to be replaced on the Sierra Point design guidelines, but on the Sierra Point master plan subcommittee due to a conflict. And I have discussed that with legal. And, at this point, I would need to be recuse myself from any discussions on that.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
If I may, for the record, because of the reference to a conflict. It's an apparent conflict. It has been discussed. It's over a pretty close call, and the council member is choosing to recuse in an abundance of caution. But I want to be clear that this is not a financial conflict. It's a really close call, and it's more about appearance. Thank you, Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. Councilmember Mackin or Councilmember Cunningham, are either of you interested? If not, I'm happy to participate.
I do believe I'll be spending the next few months pretty busy with Ann O'Brien as the liaison. So
okay,
I just took on another big role, so I'll step out.
Okay.
Okay. I'm willing to do it.
Okay, Councilmember Mackin will be the replacement. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the countywide assignments and subcommittee reports because I was on both. So Councilmember Cunningham and I met with the Public Advisory Committee. We interviewed South San Francisco's Cultural Arts Commission representative regarding their public art master plan. They're undertaking the process that I believe we will undertake in the next year or so. And so we were interviewing them to learn about how their public outreach process has gone and best practices and things that they've learned from creating this master plan, how they put together their RFP, how much it costs. It was a really great interview. We learned a lot, and we're going to be continuing to collaborate with them as we move forward with our public art master plan. Is there anything you want to add?
They were very generous with their time.
Then we also had the Brisbane School District 2x2 subcommittee. We have a new member of the school district on that 2x2. So we had an introduction. We discussed the JPA. We discussed the Guadalupe Canyon redevelopment project, and then also opportunities for maybe collaborations on some workforce housing, teacher workforce housing. We also discussed what other neighboring school districts are doing with respect to teacher housing and giving some suggestions on where they could maybe find allies outside of just us. Is there anything you want to add?
Nope.
Is there anything that anyone else has?
I wanted to let you know that I had a San Francisco roundtable meeting. Nothing really new to report. Also had a technical working group meeting with the SFO roundtable. Again, just working on ongoing issues. And then I did have a meeting with Supervisor Canepa this morning where he asked for my opinion on possible uses that the city may have for Measure K funds. And I would be happy to relay any discussion from staff or my fellow council members to him, in the upcoming couple weeks. He's looking at direction before June. So we certainly have time to get input on that.
Okay, anyone else?
I had a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting, and they're still moving forward on sourcing a power portfolio that's 100% renewable by 2025. Most recent was a contract with Intermountain Electric Company for solar with storage for 20 years. And PCE's also been advancing a program called Solar and Storage for Public Buildings. It's a program of which Brisbane is going to be participating with solar on Mission Blue with on-site battery storage as well. And in addition to that, PCE will be evaluating our library, and I'm told possibly the community center as possible additions to see whether they qualify and can be included in that program expansion. So that would be with solar and battery storage.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Could I just follow up on that? I know the hour is late, so I'll be real quick. We will be signing the paperwork with regards to the Mission Blue project here in the next couple of days. And then we've been doing a lot of work out in front of the building that you may have noticed for the EV charging stations. So those will be operational in the near future.
I'm going to make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:45. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. We'll move on to written communications.
I received correspondence from Dana Dilworth on February 2nd and Tony Varios on January 31st regarding housing element.
Thank you. We are now at oral communications number 2. Is there any member of the public wishing to make public comment? Paul Bluskow, please keep your comments brief. We have 3 minutes.
And I know it's late. I just want to say that in the years past, it's been said that just because Paul Bluskow says the sky is falling, doesn't mean the sky is falling. And this tree issue is a big deal. And back when that comment was made at a council meeting and everybody had a good chuckle, 2 people died from the result of the inaction that that happened over something so simple that could have changed the outcome of this tragedy. That was years ago. So when I'm talking about these trees having an impact on the public right of way, the city attorney should take note that any trees on city property that are deemed dangerous, and the blue gums, those eucalyptus trees, are deemed the most dangerous trees. So yes, an arborist would come out and say those are tall, those are old, those are dangerous trees. So they're going to impact somebody's property or the public right of way. So I wanted to make it noted that that's a big deal. And that's why I mentioned to Clyde that that's within his purview to start to look at that. So I hope there's something done about it. We apply for grants or whatever we have to do, but we need to do it soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Michelle Salmon.
Michelle Salmon.
Madam Mayor, I have 2 issues, distinct issues. One is Orchard Partners, the proposed developer for the quarry, filed a specific plan late last year for their 1.4 million square foot logistics facility that would operate 24/7. It triggered an addendum notice of preparation for their EIR in December. And that's a really bad timing for people to really respond. In light of the extent of the Allen Buckeye damage during the storm and the somewhat 8 football fields of material that came down from Buckeye, I really think that the notice of NOP to make notice of preparation to make comments on the EIR should be reopened and extended. And I think that the people of Brisbane need to know that there is a proposal for a 24/7 hour operation, 1.4 square million feet of logistical space. That means trucks in and out 24/7, that the people of Brisbane should know about this and have an opportunity to respond. The second issue that I just want to briefly say is I am really sorry that the city council had to approve this housing element and the ludicrous RENA numbers that the state has slapped us with. I don't feel that it's equitable to expect Brisbane to do 75% growth in housing in just 8 years. That far exceeds the anticipated population growth in the same period of time. And I understand why you felt you had to approve it to protect us from this builders thing and protect us from all the other threats that the state of California is pushing at Brisbane. But I would like us to push back as hard as we can on those RENA numbers and tell them this is not fair or equitable for the city of Brisbane, and they need to back the you-know-what off. Thank you very much, Council, for your consideration and your patience in this.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 10:45.
Thank you.